It was supposed to be just another shift, same sweat-soaked apron, same indifferent faces walking in and out, same stifling air thick with the scent of fried food and broken dreams. But that night, something shifted. The moment Isaiah bent down to place a napkin beside a visibly trembling, pregnant woman sitting alone at table 7, a storm began brewing, not just outside, where gray clouds curled like fists around the moon, but in his life, in ways he never could have imagined. And by the time the night was over, he'd lose the one thing keeping him afloat, his job. But just days later, when a gleaming black luxury car pulled up outside his rundown apartment building, everything he thought he knew about life, and kindness, would change forever. Backhand index pointing right: if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the hidden rewards of doing good when no one's watching, then please like this video, drop a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Rappel of Hope, where every story brings you closer to the heart of humanity. Yellow Heart. Isaiah Parker had been waiting tables for 3 years at Marlowe's Diner, a struggling family-run joint in the inner heart of Memphis where time moved slower and tips came in pennies more than dollars. Being a black man in his 20s with no college degree, no connections, and a fading dream of becoming a music teacher, Isaiah had learned early that life didn't hand you favors, you earned every crumb with tired hands and hopeful eyes. He worked double shifts to help his grandma pay her rent and her prescriptions, often going without dinner so she wouldn't have to. There were days when his shoes had holes and the manager would sneer at them, but Isaiah kept smiling, kept pouring coffee and scribbling orders, because that's what survivors do, they keep going. On that particular Thursday evening, business was slow. Rain hammered the sidewalk outside, and most regulars had opted to stay home. Isaiah was wiping down the counter when the diner bell jingled. The woman who walked in looked drenched, exhausted, and out of place. She clutched her belly with both hands, her coat unzipped over a swollen stomach, and her eyes scanning the diner like she was searching for something she'd lost. She moved like someone carrying more than just physical weight. She looked young, barely in her 20s, with skin pale from worry and lips trembling from cold or fear, Isaiah couldn't tell. He immediately walked up, offered her the best seat near the heater, and poured her a cup of warm tea on the house. He noticed she kept glancing at the menu but made no move to order. Her hands kept drifting to her stomach, rubbing in slow circles. When he gently asked if she needed help, her eyes welled up, and in a barely audible whisper, she confessed she hadn't eaten all day. Without hesitation, Isaiah reached into his own pocket, the same one that held only $7 and change, and walked back to the kitchen. He fixed her a warm plate of roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans, one of the pricier items on the menu. He even added a slice of apple pie, just like his grandma used to do when he was little and sad. When he brought the food out and placed it in front of her, she stared at it in stunned silence, then looked at him as though she'd never been seen before, like someone had finally said, "You matter." But compassion has a cost in a world that watches profits more than people. His manager, Mr. Delaney, a gruff man with thinning hair and a heart that had likely rusted shut long ago, had been watching from the back. The moment Isaiah returned to the kitchen, he was met with fury. Mr. Delaney accused him of theft, of giving out food without permission, of crossing lines, of costing the diner money it couldn't afford to lose. Isaiah tried to explain, to beg for understanding, but the older man wouldn't listen. He said it didn't matter how sad the woman looked or what her story was, rules were rules. And just like that, with his apron still soaked from spilled tea and rainwater, Isaiah was fired on the spot. He walked home that night with his head down, shoulders soaked and spirit crushed. When he got back to the apartment he shared with his grandmother, he didn't say much. Just sat on the edge of his mattress, looking out the cracked window at a city that seemed to have turned its back on him. His grandma, sensing the weight in his silence, placed a gentle hand on his knee and whispered, "God sees what men don't." But Isaiah wasn't sure anymore. The days that followed were harder than he expected. He applied to every diner, fast food chain, and corner store within walking distance, but no one was hiring, or maybe they just didn't want a recently fired waiter with a charity case reputation. He pawned his old guitar for groceries and skipped meals so his grandma could eat. Still, every night before sleeping, he thought about that woman, hoped she and her baby were okay. Even though he had no idea who she was, he felt connected to her through that moment of shared humanity. Then came the 5th day. Isaiah had just come back from another round of job hunting when a deep honk echoed outside. He peeked through the blinds and blinked twice. A sleek, black Mercedes-Benz with tinted windows had pulled up in front of his building. For a few seconds, he thought it was a mistake. Cars like that didn't belong on his block. But then the passenger side door opened, and a tall man in a tailored navy blue suit stepped out. He looked around until his eyes landed on Isaiah's window. He nodded once. Confused but curious, Isaiah walked outside. The man introduced himself as James Whitmore, and said the words that left Isaiah frozen, "You helped my daughter last week. I believe you saved her life." In a heartbeat, everything came flooding back. The pregnant woman. The food. The tears. Isaiah's legs nearly gave out. James went on to explain that his daughter, Emily, had run away from home after a difficult falling out. She was overwhelmed, pregnant, and afraid. He and his wife had searched for her for days, terrified. When they finally found her, she was safe, and all she could talk about was a kind young man at a diner who fed her when no one else would. She said that meal gave her the strength to call home. James said he couldn't let an act of such compassion go unanswered. He reached into his coat pocket and handed Isaiah a letter. It was a fully paid scholarship to a nearby music college, something Isaiah had only ever dreamed of. Attached was a check that could cover several months of bills and food. And before Isaiah could find his voice, James gestured to the Mercedes and said, "She wanted you to have this." Isaiah stood still, heart pounding, tears rolling down his cheeks. In a world that so often punished kindness, here was a moment proving that no good deed, no matter how small, was ever truly forgotten. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Isaiah enrolled in music school, got his own small apartment, and began teaching free weekend classes to kids in his old neighborhood, passing on the gift. He never saw Emily again, but he never stopped praying for her. Every time he sat at a piano or stood in front of a classroom full of kids who looked like he once did, tired, poor, but hopeful, he remembered that one rainy night when everything changed. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, please don't scroll away. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Rappel of Hope. Leave a comment below about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness. We'd love to feature your story in a future video. Red Heart.